Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
There it is. There it is.
There it is.
Oh, you guys, shock and awe. We are not a party of two today. We are a party of three.
Yeah. The perfect number.
Dan, didn't even think of that, of course. Dan and I were feeling generous, and we were like, someone needs to give Greg a platform.
Yeah, that's right.
Someone needs to give him a voice.
Poor
no
Greg.
one will listen to this man.
Poor Greg.
So.
Have you ever picked up a hitchhiker and then like 2 minutes later you're like, I should not have picked up this guy? Yeah. I tell you.
Is this going to be my new bestie, or is this the son of Sam? Who knows?
That's right.
That's why it's not advisable to pick up hitchhikers.
Well, happy Muse Day, everyone. As you can see, our MuseCast family has grown a little bit for today. And so, without further ado, and for those of you who maybe don't know, I'm Shawna Boren. That is Dan Kent. And on my screen, that is Greg Boyd. We are so excited to have Greg here. It's not all pity. It is, let's just say it's 40% pity, 60% excitement. Is that a fair equation?
Good. Well, I'll enjoy both.
Awesome. So we've got Greg with us today, and let me just set the stage for a moment. Don't worry, you're still going to hear from Dan in his world famous summary, but we're going to set the stage because it is a little bit different today. We are exhausted because we just had a fantastic weekend, our annual summer get together. And so it was a full weekend of hanging out with everyone, and it was wonderful and great. Part of that was Greg had the sermon within our series, Testify. And unfortunately, he did not have enough time. He had about 4 to 5 hours worth of material, but only a 35-minute time slot. And
so the rest of 2.5 hours is going to come right now.
So buckle up and get ready. So we are going to have Greg lay out for us the things that he was not able to share with us on Sunday. So it'll be a little more like a documentary in that we're hearing from Greg, which is going to be great. And then Dan and I will kind of bop in here and there. I may take a nap, because it could get really lengthy. We'll see what happens.
Love that vote of confidence.
No, it's gonna be good. But I'm just saying it's gonna look a little different today. But I know you guys are excited for it. Greg told you guys this was coming, and so we are thrilled to have the opportunity just to dig in a little deeper and to get a peek behind the scenes and see what was left on the cutting room floor, as we say. Yeah. All right, sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for being here with us today.
Honored to be here.
Tell the people Happy Muse Day. That's what we say.
Happy Muse Day.
There we go. He follows instructions so well.
Yes.
My dog just perked up.
Oh, nice. Dan, are you ready to summarize us?
Yes, I'm ready. Are you guys familiar with Statler and Waldorf?
Nope.
Huh?
They're the two grumpy old men in the Muppets.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what Shawna and I are going to be in this episode. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Oh goodness.
I never saw it. So I don't get the joke.
What? You never saw the Muppets?
Like you've Kermit seen the Muppets.
I've seen Kermit the Frog, but these two guys, I don't know what you're talking about.
They're the guys like up in the opera box, right? Like
that's amazing.
I must have missed that episode.
Wow. Dude, it's like before my time. I thought for sure you would have seen it.
No, I'm even before the time before your time.
Wow.
That's how
Can I say really quick? I'm so sorry, Dan.
Go for it.
I'm unfiltered right now. I'm tired. There was a time when my family moved back to Texas for a couple of years, and this is what I'm going to say. I was missing Minnesota, and so have you guys ever heard of having like a comfort movie that you'll fall asleep to because you know it, and so it's not going to freak you out or give you nightmares or anything. It's your comfort movie. Mm-hmm. My comfort movie was Grumpier Old Men. So, because it was based in Minnesota. And so every night for 22 months, I would fall asleep to Grumpier Old Men because it just gave me comfort and made me remember Minnesota. So anyway, there you go.
Yes.
So now we've just been given a peek into Shawna's tortured psyche.
Dan gets it every week.
For 22 months. That's bizarre. I remember that movie though. I saw it once. I wasn't that impressed with
What?
it.
Wait, what?
And who starred in that?
Walter Matthau.
Yeah, that's right.
And who is the other dude?
Yeah, who is the other guy?
Yeah.
Lemon? John Lemon?
Oh yeah, Jack Lemmon. Yeah.
Jack Lemon.
Jack Lemmon? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gregory, watch that today. It's so good. It's so good. I love it so much. Anyway.
I'm sure I'll watch it and I'll find great comfort in it.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Summary.
I'm taking over. I'm doing a summary. Although I wouldn't mind doing movie reviews every week too, but
that's always
I think
fun.
we do have an obligation to the Woodland Hills community to offer the summary and discussion. So this week, you know what I forgot already? What did you title this sermon?
Testify to the way of peace.
Hey, all
Very
right.
easy title.
Yeah, it should just be called Way of Peace or something like that. But I changed the title and changed the whole sermon like 3 times.
Yeah.
At the last minute.
Yeah, I had a different title than what was on the website.
I did a Friday run through with the team, and it just it didn't go well. So that's when I got an idea to how to reorganize it and put it in the order it came out in.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, so the sermon basically focused on Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 through 6, but in particular verses 5 and 6. But I'm going to read the whole section, and then we'll focus on some of the points that you made from that sermon. But chapter 11, verse 1, it starts off like this. I was given a reed like a measuring rod and was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar with its worshipers, but exclude the outer court. Do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months, and I will appoint my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. They are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands, and they stand before the Lord of the earth. Chapter 11, verses 5 and 6. This is the key part that we're going to focus on today, especially. It goes like this. If anyone tries to harm them, fire will come out from their mouths and devour the enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. They have power to shut up the sky so that it will not rain during the time that they are prophesying, and they have power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth and every kind of plague as often as they want. And so these 2 olive trees, these 2 lampstands, these 2 witnesses, they have all of this power, and don't mess with them is basically what the angel is saying. You just don't mess with these guys, because you will pay the consequences. It will be violent. It will be painful. There will be suffering because you don't mess with God's witnesses. And that sort of seems to be what the message is there. And this raises certain questions, of course, because that sort of threatening of violence seems incongruous with the gentleness and the self-sacrifice of the Lamb. And so that's sort of the big question. Now, you talked about a lot of other things in that passage as well, and you also skipped over a bunch of stuff, but your focus really was on how do we make sense of this apparent promise, this threat of violence that basically is the church. The church is going to be this violent sort of threat to the world. How do we make sense of that in light of what we know about Jesus, the gentle Lamb? And so what you did is you kind of focused on 4 key kind of insights to help us make sense of this. The first one is that it's true that they were told that they had this power, but they actually didn't use it. They were martyred just like Jesus was. They ended up sacrificing themselves in the same way that Jesus was sacrificed. And so that's sort of how they eventually have this victory. And so since they were martyred, they obviously didn't use this power that they had. And so even though they had this gift, they chose not to use it. They, how would you say it? They basically put their sword in their sheath and chose not to use it. And the third kind of aspect that you looked at this is you looked at these olive trees, And you kind of looked at what they symbolized, and you looked at Zechariah 4, how the two olive trees, they represent victory, yes, but not by might and not by power, but by God's Spirit. And it's basically a way of looking at how God will end up being victorious through relationship and love, not through force. And then the fourth sort of aspect that you looked at this is that... the calling down of destructive fire. You looked at how that related to the story of Elijah in the Old Testament, how Elijah had this power to basically incinerate his foes, which is a strange power to have, but that's what he had. And there's this story in the Old Testament where this king, and I can't pronounce his name, and I'm going to let you do it when I'm done with the summary. But
starts with an A.
Yeah.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and so this king sends 50 men out to see Elijah because he wants to meet with Elijah. Well, Elijah's all paranoid and he's kind of defensive, and he ends up using this power to incinerate these 50 people. And so the king sends 50 more, and Elijah incinerates them, and then the king just sends 50 more. He's gonna get Elijah to come. I mean, he's gonna just keep sending men, and these poor guys, these poor soldiers, are like going out there with this threat of being incinerated. And so this third group of 50 goes out. And finally, the Spirit of God comes down and says, no. An angel of the Lord comes down, not the Spirit of God. An angel of the Lord comes down and says, don't do this. Go with the men. The king's not going to hurt you. Basically, buck up is basically what this angel says. Stop being such a scaredy cat. And so then they go, and that's sort of the story. But now fast forward in the New Testament in Luke, where you have this situation where they're in the same region that Elijah did this in, and we're in this situation where John's like, hey, should we incinerate these people who have rejected you, Jesus? And Jesus chastises them and rebukes them, uses the same word that he uses to rebuke demons, and says, no, you don't know what spirit you are of. That is not how we roll. And then you kind of look back at this Elijah story and kind of notice how really Elijah was not really obeying the will of God in that situation either, and neither was Jesus's disciples when they wanted to incinerate Jesus's enemies. And so the point of all of that is that even though one might have this power to call down fire, it is just not the Lord's will to do that to our enemies. And so I think that is sort of like, with that four-pronged sort of approach, we see that, okay, well, what's really being said here is that the church has incredible power, but their victory doesn't come through that power. Their victory comes through the same self-sacrificial love that we find in Jesus. And so it's not a matter of the church is martyred because they are weak and feeble. They are martyred because they are subservient to the will of God. And then we kind of ended with a prayer, a corporate prayer, and that is sort of the gist of it. Did I miss any? I know I missed a lot of little things in each of those because I want to keep the summary concise so that we can save more room for discussion on the points that were cut out. But that is my summary.
So the 4 points I made, and John, it just really illustrates how when he uses violent imagery, the violence, if you have a violent heart and you're expecting God to act violent and want God's people to act violent, well, he gives you that up front. Yeah, this is what you expect, right? But so he hooks you kind of with that whole thing. That's just what you expect. But then if you look closely, and if you know that God looks like the lamb, you have to look closely because this picture is not consistent with everything else we learn about the lamb.
That's right.
So you look more closely, and then you find these 4 clues that their victory is in their death, in their martyrdom.
Yeah.
And so they'd be the last people on the planet to use fire to try to stay alive.
Yeah.
And that the second one was what was the second one? They don't use the power. He says they have the power, but they don't use it. So like Jesus,
they don't use
legions of angels, they restrain, and something virtuous about that. And then the third point was what was the third point?
The olive tree.
The meaning of the olive trees is all about hope and peace and the Holy Spirit. And it's not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. So it's not by fire breathing and all the rest of the course of things you might do. It's the exact opposite. And so in all these things, John's bringing together this violent picture with everything that means the exact opposite. And the last point is simply that it contradicts the teachings of Jesus. And that's really the most important one. That settles it right there. You've got to look for a different meaning, and the meaning is found in John's subverting this whole thing. But that leads me to the first point that I had to cut out, and it has to do with what I call semi-autonomous power. And this is just the idea that when God gives an agent any kind of unique authority, unique talent, anything, it doesn't undermine their free will. It augments it. It augments their say-so. It gives them a microphone. But that means, since their free will isn't undermined, but rather augmented, that they are still free to use it for the better or for worse. And the greater the gift, the more good you can do with it, but also the more evil you can do with it. And so we find certain times in the Bible where we have, like with Elijah, the supernatural things happening, but they don't seem like they're part of God's will. And that's where we need to dig deeper and find out what else is going on here. In the case of Elijah, the text itself makes it clear that it was not God's will for those first 2 battalions of men to get incinerated. That happened out of Elijah's fear. And so you can understand why Jesus rebuked his disciples for wanting to imitate that hero of the faith, because he was out of God's will. And it shows you that Jesus would have rebuked the 2 witnesses in the book of Revelation. Had they used that fire power and that drought power and that plague power, Jesus would have rebuked them. They don't know what spirit they are of. But they remain faithful, and they don't use the power that they're given. So that one thing I had to cut out, because I've never talked about this in the pulpit, but I get asked it a lot. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to address since I was already addressing with the most problematic text in Revelation, I thought, why not address the most problematic text in the whole New Testament when it comes to nonviolence? And that's the slaying of Ananias and Sapphira in Acts chapter 5. And the question here is this a matter of God striking 2 people dead because they cheated on a promise that they made? Or is it rather something that's in the authority of Peter himself? You have to realize that in the book of Acts, when Peter and Paul and others go around, they're aware that they carry the authority of Christ. And so when Peter comes upon this lame man as he's going into the temple, the man asks for silver and gold, and Peter says, I don't want any of that. But such as I have, I give to you. Arise and walk. He doesn't say, Father, make this person arise and walk, or heal this person, or whatever. He just says, arise and walk, and the guy does. Just like Jesus, he just spoke to the thing because he has the authority. So you don't have to ask for the authority. They were aware that they had it. And Paul had it as well. And sometimes he did funky things with it, like when they blessed his handkerchiefs and sent them out to get healed. We're not told whether that was God's will or not, but he had the authority apparently to do that. So he's got this kind of authority. It's residential authority. So then listen to the text. And I'm just going to read the passage, and then I'll just make a few points on it. So here's what we read. Because this is the text that's most frequently appealed to by those who want to claim that, yeah, Jesus reveals kind of the nice side of God, but he's also got this violent streak, and he can strike people dead and command genocide and all the rest. So let's see if it holds up. It says, now a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. Because the idea was the early Christians, they sold all they had and they put it into a common purse. And they made a pledge before God to do that. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. And so everyone had agreed to this common purse, but they hold back on this. And then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that the Spirit has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received from the land? And so note here, he says, Satan has filled your heart. How is it that Satan has so filled your heart? And he lied to the Holy Spirit, and the emphasis is that this is a real dark thing that he did. Okay, it's not blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, but it is a lie. And then he says, didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God. because the promise was made before God. And then it says, when Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. Just note here that Ananias dies in response to Peter's words. When he pronounces that you've just lied to God, he falls dead. So it's at Peter's word that he falls dead, which implies that it's on Peter's authority that he falls dead. And then it goes on, and great fear seized all those who heard what had happened. Does God really motivate people by installing fear? In the post-Jesus movement, is that the motivation we're supposed to have? That already suggests that this was not something that was in God's will. Then some men came forward and wrapped up his body and carried him out and buried him. About 3 hours later, his wife, Sapphira, came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter asked her, tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land? Yes, she said, that is the price. So Peter apparently holds out the money and says, is this really what you got for your land? And he's trapping her. If she was smart, she would have said, no, I leave all finances to my husband's affairs. What are you talking about? But she goes, yeah, that was the fair price. Well, he's got her. Peter said to her, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, he grabs her attention. Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also. So listen, he gets your attention, and then he pronounces what sounds like a curse, a pronouncement of doom. That's what a curse is. And so he makes this curse. And at that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. So in direct response to Peter's words and Peter's authority, she dies at the words of this curse. Then the young men came in and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. So is that how God motivates people in the New Testament? Hey, if you don't pay up, I kill you. I've heard sermons where you're playing with your life if you shortchange God on tithing, that kind of thing. Is that right? Paul says the love of Christ compels us. What happened to that? And then it says, then the young men came in and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her with her husband. And great, I already read that. So did God strike Ananias and Sapphira dead? Well, here's I'll just give you a few reasons why I would say no. Number one, that violates the character of God revealed in Jesus Christ, whose ministry centers on the cross. It is not consistent with self-sacrificial, other-oriented love. So that already puts me in a stance of, no, I have to say, no, God didn't do it. I have to read more carefully. The text, notice, does not say that God struck anyone dead, or that God approved of them striking anyone dead, or Peter having these two people died. And the fact that fear was the result suggests to me, and perfect love casts out fear, it suggests to me that this was not part of God's great plan. God doesn't motivate people that way. Third thing, what the text does say very clearly is that Ananias and Sapphira fell dead in response to Peter's words and Peter's authority after he pronounces this word of doom. And so see, here's what's interesting. The concept of curse, and I talk about this in Crucifixion of the Warrior God in one of the appendices, but the concept of curse in the ancient world had primarily to do with lifting protection off of somebody. And that makes them vulnerable to outside forces. And so Peter lifts the protection. He's got this apostolic authority that he can use for better or for worse, or maybe sometime in the middle. But he announces this curse. They die. And it was under his authority. He lifts the curse. And now remember, Satan has filled his heart. And Satan is the one who comes to kill, only to kill, steal, and destroy. So if we just, if this was a game of mystery murder, who looks guilty here? The one who comes to kill, steal, and destroy, or the one who comes only to give life, and that more abundantly? I suspect Peter lifts this curse, and Satan, who's already biting at the bit to get as much of these two people as he could possibly do, does so, and the result is their death. He lures them into this deal. This is Satan's strategy. Lures them into this deal. Hey, you can keep some for yourself. No one will know about it. You could do well. Make it have a little side gig going on. And they take it, and then it kills them. So I submit that we've got good reason to say God did not kill these people. That was the work of Satan, along with the help of Peter. Remember, always had the most militant. He was the one who fought the most to hold on to that militant view of the Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And what do you think? Because that the curse where you lift that protection, that's different than what Elijah had. Elijah seemed to have like this power to like call fire down.
Yep.
Whereas so I could believe like I could believe that just a normal follower of Christ could have the power, that their words are powerful enough to curse. And I have a hard, I guess here's what I'm saying. Like, I have just a ton of respect for you, Greg, and Paul Eddy, and but I couldn't really imagine either one of you with the power to call fire down from heaven and incinerate people. Like, that seems like that's so we
God
don't
never
see
gave
that.
me that gift. As much as I've prayed for it, I've never had the power to incinerate people.
Right. But we don't see that. We don't see that type of power anymore. I could see the type of power that Peter has. Because we've talked about how, when you do things like, like Ouija boards, and you try to contact spirits, how you're kind of playing with fire because your words do have power there that you don't even understand. And I could kind of see that with Peter here. And so my only point is that the reason why I think this is, relevant, even though we might not be able to strike people down and things like that, is the point that you're making is that we really do have power. We, our words have power. And so like when you say things about people, when you curse people, when you tell them to go to hell and whatever, even if it's like, even if you don't really mean it, you don't really know what kind of power those words have. And,
Sure.
And so that's what I was thinking when you were talking about this thing, because it's easy to get lost in the supernatural elements here, and so that's what I was thinking.
But in some ways, it's like, if the extreme cases illustrate the less extreme cases. So if we have if Elijah could misuse the grand authority that God had given to him to kill people, well, we have to look at how do our little say-so, domains of say-so, harm people, and how do we use our say-so for better or for worse. But, when you're talking about some of the strange events in the Bible, Moses striking the rock out of anger, but the rod still works, whatever. The important part, it's strange, it's weird, it's not part of our world today, but to draw out the lesson from it. And the lesson here is, I think, important. For all I know, there are people who can do miraculous signs and lure people, and maybe it's by some trick, or maybe they're tapping into something in the spiritual realm and getting some supernatural power, kind of the reverse of what we do when we tap into the spirit to help heal people. I think there are people out there who maybe have that kind of power. It's extraordinary, but then the main thing is it shows you that just because someone calls down fire from heaven shouldn't impress us. Paul says that an angel, a demon can appear as an angel of light. Satan himself can masquerade as an angel of light. And the beast in Revelation 13, he calls down fire from heaven, and it wows all the people of the world. It's one of the ways that they start pledging their allegiance to him. So you can do a fire trick if you know the right people or are connected to the right sources, but that doesn't mean it's good or godly.
Yeah.
And that all is helpful when it comes to explaining how God is not engaged in violence. And God doesn't necessarily condone everything that his even his anointed people do. Some of what they do with the power that he gives them is ungodly.
Yeah. I think another, and Shawna, I hope I'm not cutting you off here either, but I think another interesting angle to this that I think about is that part of me is like, why would you give someone the power to call fire down to incinerate 50 people? That's like, do we really need that much power? So on one hand, I think that, but then on the other hand, I think, well, we really do have a lot of power. I mean, we can really, an individual can, even if you can't call down fire, you can still do a lot of harm. You can do a lot of damage, and we see it in the news every day.
Yeah.
And it just, to me, it shows me a couple things. And I don't mean to go off track here, but these are just the things I was thinking about as you were talking. It shows that, it shows how much God trusts his creation, the potential of his creation to give them that much power. And it shows how much he trusts in the power of love to ultimately constrain that power, where people eventually learn that, yeah, I could do this, but love is so much better. And the way of the Lamb is so much better. It doesn't look like it, but what we've seen now, that we've seen people misuse the power over and over again, eventually humanity will realize that the way of the Lamb is the only wise way.
Let us hope.
That's the hope, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shawna, you want to say anything?
I mean, I'd love to if I could. You guys are very excited, and it's understandable. I'll just say, so that we can keep things moving, what I keep reflecting on is your statement in your sermon on Sunday, and I feel like you fleshed this out a bit more with the Ananias and Sapphira story, is that, the power that we are given of God, it does not override our free will, and the responsibility that we have to utilize, to wield this power in ways that lift others up and not lord over others. And I think no matter how you're wired, there is something within most of us that just, we want to get the final say, the last word. We want to win. And I've said this before on the MuseCast, that this kind of talk, and again, Revelation, I feel like we come across these themes and they circle around and recycle themselves, and so some of it may sound repetitive, but this reminds me so much of the movie Tombstone, and that famous line where he says, "You tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me," because he wants this revenge and this justice so desperately. And I think what we're saying here is it's this revenge, this justice. It's actually going to be you laying down your life. It's not going to be you kicking tail and taking names. And I think that a lot of people, that's a hard realization. It doesn't feel as satisfying maybe initially. And I just love the reframe that you did with the sermon, with this first additional point that you made. What we've kind of done throughout Revelation, I think this reframing has been really huge. And I think that there have been many people, both in position and just in everyday life, that have wielded their power to get one up, to get more power, instead of using their power to make themselves smaller for the sake of others. And at least what I'm hearing is you're saying, hey, that's not the way of the Lamb. That's not our path. And that's something that we really kind of need to remember and lean into a bit more, instead of clamoring for more.
I think we're supposed to go the opposite direction, to follow the crucified Christ. He went from the top position and freely went to the lowest position out of love for us, and the most painful position out of love for us. And then he says, "Follow me, imitate that, go and do likewise." And so, whereas the world is always out for self-centered gain, more, better, get your best life now, race to the top. It's perpetual ascendancy. It's Lucifer's lies. We're to be going in the opposite direction, which maybe leads me to. I'll bring up the second point.
Yeah.
And I'm reversing what I had planned, but it just fits in here. And that is that I had a section on where it says that the two witnesses wore sackcloth. And it really represents this very point. Sackcloth was made of the black wool sheep. The sheep's black wool, and it was a very coarse, kind of a low-grade wool, and so it was scratchy on your body. It was not comfortable, but the prophets wore this to communicate a meaning. It was part of their message, and the message had several nuances. One was a mourning, a sense of lament. Or the state of Israel, what's going on in the world. The second was a call for repentance, saying the road you're on is heading towards destruction, turn around and head towards life. And the third one was simply a statement on resisting the ways of empire, especially in Revelation. Babylon is the city of perpetual ascendancy, and you read about it in chapter 17, where they import all this gold and all this luxury, and all slaves from all over the world. It's all the best, more, ascend. But they're saying no to all that. They're wearing sackcloth, and in this case, in Revelation, I think it has nuances of all three. And I think that speaks to the state of the church. Our job is to, yes, lament the state of this world. It is in really bad shape, and it's because humans have not been faithful to the ways of God. We've not practiced good stewardship. We haven't taken care of the earth and the animal kingdom. We've looked for our own gain rather than the good of the whole. We haven't thought beyond that, and that's why we've created this environmental situation that we're in now. And so it's it's a dire state of affairs. So we lament, and it's a call to repentance. We're showing people a different way. That the way of self-centeredness, perpetual more dissatisfaction, consumerism, that leads to death. It kills your soul now and leads to death later. But the way of the Lamb leads to eternal life. And so the model going in the other direction. And then it shows the resistance to the empire. And I really believe that we are called to resist the ways of the empire. There's this great, the momentum of the entire Western culture now in this race for more and the promise of technology and this better future. And everyone's so busy chasing after their best life now. We're to resist that. Instead of to follow the Spirit, and when the Spirit says enough, like, okay, this is enjoy what you have, be content with what you have, and now let all your surplus go to investing in eternity, to investing in other people, give it away, invest in the kingdom, which is the only way, by the way, our money takes on any real value, any lasting value, because that's how it takes on eternal value. The only thing that survives the judgment and goes into the heavenly city is love. And all that's consistent with love. And so that's why Jesus talks about investing in your eternal reward. You're storing up treasures in heaven because you're building your character in that way. You're deepening your capacity for that. And so, our sackcloth is a sign of, we're to wear sackcloth, to live more simply than we could, more modestly than we could, to live beneath our means. I saw the stat that was like, it was something like 82, it was in the 80s, percentage of Americans live at or beyond their means. There's only like 15% or so that actually purposely live beneath it to keep on saving more, to give away.
I'm surprised it's 15%. I'm surprised it's not 5%, honestly.
It's terrible. Oh, and the amount of debt Americans owe is just astronomical. And it's going up, as is the debt of our entire country. And that's all because we can't wait for more. We want to buy it now. So all of our debt is really a claim that our children will pay for it now. Our children, someone later on will pay for this. We don't know how, but we want it now. And so we keep printing this money to keep up our lifestyles. Kingdom people, it's not that we all have to live in abject poverty, but there ought to be a point where you say enough. Yeah. And that word is just gone out of our vocabulary.
Right.
Because there's always more. You could always get it better. You could always get new improvement. There's always ooh, ah, ee, ooh, ah. And we're to say, no, enough. And now that creates space for generosity with our time and generosity with our money. And that's when our time and money take on eternal value.
Yeah. I think it's maybe good that this part didn't get included on Sunday, because it may have been a bridge too far for some people. But because it's hard to hear enough, then we could easily go, well, but God is blessing me, so why not more? More means that I've been richly blessed, and if I have more, that means I've been more blessed. And it's just, and I don't know if that's just an American thing, if it's a Western thing, I don't know what it is, but enough is. Yeah, it's kind of a dirty word, this enough. And we've talked about this on the MuseCast before, Dan, about leaving space, having margin. And that's just not really in most, I'm not going to say all, but in most people's vocabulary. The last thing I'll say before kicking it over, because I know Dan has some thoughts or questions about this. The last thing I'll say is, for me, this does tie to your first point. It's like, how do we utilize the power that God has given us? Do we use it in the appropriate right ways? How do we use the blessings that God has given us? Do we use them and submit them before Him to say, how do you want me to steward this? Or do we say, ooh, thank you so much. More, give me more, give me more. Right. And I suspect I know the answer, but I think they tie together really well. And we need that reminder to resist.
Yeah. And see, the thing is that the beast works with deception. The people who worship the beast, they don't see the beast as the beast. They see it as something good, as positive, as wonderful. All these promises, it's making our best life now. And you read, the description of Babylon, it is their best life now, even though it makes life worse for everybody else because they're exploiting everybody else. But they get their best life now. And so here, as we sit in empire, we are in the wealthiest empire the world's ever imagined.
Yeah.
We have comforts that kings never dreamed of. Um, and we have to be aware of how we are caught up in this system of ascendancy and how it shapes our mindset, which is why the idea of putting on the brakes, intentionally saying, enough, I'm not going to participate in that rat race system of climbing to the top anymore. I'm going to intentionally live modestly and minimally and all the rest. It's so hard, but it also is so necessary because this is our witness.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our witness.
So I have an unanswerable question. Well, I hope maybe it's not unanswerable. Maybe this is where we'll finally get the answer from.
Finally the answer.
Greg Boyd, yes. So, like, what wisdom do you have for finding that spot of enough? Because I can see where a lot of people are having a hard time just making ends meet, and so they feel like, well, I don't have enough, and
Right.
And so, like, what do they do? And on top of which, even if you do have enough, well, like, are you saying that we should be Amish? I mean, like, is that the ideal, or is do you need to avoid that also? I mean, how do you navigate those gray areas?
See, I here's where I think it's very important to remember Paul's conscience principle about on things that are disputable, things that if there's no clear instruction, everyone's got to follow their conscience, everyone's got to try to follow the spirit, and everyone's got to respect everyone else's decision to see it otherwise. And because there aren't any rules here that we can just lay out on how this is to be done. All I know is, on the one hand, God isn't into poverty. He's not calling us all to poverty. In fact, poverty is no closer to the kingdom of God than is opulence, and undue wealth and stuff. That's not God's will. Is for us to be living sustainably and comfortably, but with an interest for the good of the whole, and instead of hoarding things for ourselves. And so beyond that, I can only encourage people to try to be aware of how much you have been intoxicated with the atmosphere of Babylon to like, oh, wouldn't that cabinet be nice? Wouldn't that extra thing be nice or whatever? And I'm not saying God never denies us extra things. It used to bug me, but I've gotten over it. But when the lady poured all that expensive ointment on Jesus' feet to wash his feet, and Judas, objected, or at least we think it's Judas, who says, that could have been sold and given to the poor and whatever. And Jesus says, no, leave her alone. She's done the right thing. She'll be remembered from now on because of this. Well, he's confirming extravagance. There's a place for extravagance, but you can't live by that. There's exceptions on that. But what is your mindset? You got to think about the farmer who got rich, got a bumper crops. He says, what shall I do? Well, I'll store them up for myself so I can always be living comfortably and whatever. And didn't think a thing about other people. And Jesus says, you fool, what does it do to gain the whole world but to lose your soul? This very night, your life would be, so you live in that balance. Jesus warns about wealth. The more you have, the more gravitational pull it has. And we've got a lot of wealth, most of us. But you're right. There is a contentment Paul talks about that is living beneath your means. Even when you don't have enough, he says, I've learned to be content. And so that it's good to practice contentment wherever you are at. But those who have more than they need are no place to judge those who have less than their need about their contentment. I'm assuming you have to have food, shelter, clothing, to survive. But beyond that, that's where you have to say, how much does the Lord allow me to enjoy this? And how much does the Lord say, enough? Now it's time to take that extra time and money and invest in others.
Right.
That was such a good question, Dan. And I wonder, there's something that you and I have talked about before about the indicator light on the dash. I think this is a situation where we have to always be paying attention. And what is the Spirit kind of warning us about? It's so easy for me to sit where I am and judge an article I read about a billionaire acquiring more, very, very out loud and very visibly. And I'm just like, oh, how dare he? But in my own sphere, I too can do that, not to the extent, but I too can do that. And so instead of always just looking outward and saying how dare they, we do need to look at ourselves. Yeah. And then I do wonder if part of our disconnectedness from one another has led to this becoming an issue on a grander scale. What I mean by that is we don't have that communal way of living that other cultures have or other societies have had before us. We are we've talked about this, fiercely independent people. And I'm not always looking at my situation in light of others. I'm not always looking at what I have and what I do as it relates to other people. Instead, I want to make sure that me and mine are taken care of. And then if there's something left, maybe I'll be generous and I'll float a few things their way. But there are many other cultures and societies who start from the communal aspect of it all. What do we all have in common? How can we help one another? If one has more, then they give to the one that has the least. And I wonder if some of our independence has caused us to fall more into this hole of never having enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I tell you, I will say, there was a third. We might need to do another show that's like run over from the MuseCast. So
the outtakes of the MuseCast.
That's right.
The outtakes.
But I did want to ask you about what the heck took the angel of the Lord so long to get to.
Okay, let me just respond to Shawna's question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Shawna, I think you're absolutely right. For almost all of human history, 300,000 years, we lived in groups that were interdependent. We needed one another, and we knew we needed one another. And so we created these strong social bonds. And we have all these reward, chemicals that go off in our brain when we're in deep community. We were evolved for this or created for this, whether you want to look at it from the scientific or the theological perspective. And especially in the last 100 years, with the advancement of technology, every advancement in technology, and I don't think technology is evil, but right. When it's used when it's used without a view towards what's good for the whole, on the long range, in the indigenous traditions, they have this 7 grandfathers tradition where every major decision you make should have 7 generations in mind. But when we discovered fossil fuels and natural gases under the ground and had all this opulent wealth, we didn't think ahead at all. We just start doing it. And every advance in our technology, it's just like our technological advances is just skyrocketing. And now with AI, it's going to go even faster. But every step has torn us a little bit more away from community. Because your neighbor is always more boring than what this thing can offer. And so we got television and we got cable and we've got, now every possible form of entertainment that you keep a virtual reality you can fall into, and you don't have to deal with all your dirty, smelly, grouchy, boring neighbors. And so it has the intent of fragmenting us, and we've lost community. And that's all about personal self-ascendancy, to community be damned. And that's why we've got an epidemic of loneliness, especially among young people. The more they're on social media, the lonelier they are, and the more body dystophia they have and all the rest. We didn't think ahead on this one.
No, that's such a great point.
Okay, Dan, final question.
Yeah, so I did want to hear what your explanation was for what took the angel of the Lord so long to appear to Elijah. Okay,
so it's a curious thing because 100 guys just got incinerated, and I haven't done I don't know how long the journey is from where the king was to them, but it probably was several weeks. So we got incinerated, 50. Then several weeks later, another group shows up, incinerated. And several weeks later, another group's up and almost incinerated. But the angel of the Lord says, don't be afraid. Go with them. You're supposed to go. The king never mentioned any harm. That was clear. He only wanted Elijah to answer a question about whether he'd live or die, So that shows you that it wasn't God's will to incinerate those 100 men, which forces the question, why wasn't he dispatched right away? Now, the question's unanswerable, and that's kind of my point. But it's not unanswerable because God's will is so mysterious. So a lot of people would say, God's timing is always the right timing. God's always right on time, which implies that everything that happens is according to his timing, according to his blueprint, which completely rules out free will, both on the human and angelic realm, if you think about it. But we have to remember here that our Umwelt is very small. I'm wearing a T-shirt that says, "Upgrade your Umwelt." Umwelt, that funky concept of the how narrow our bodily senses are. We take in a fraction of the percentage of the light spectrum that's out there. Most of what's going on out there, we don't have a clue. Any more than the cockroach in your wall has a clue what you're doing when you're doing mathematics. It's outside of our Umwelt. And that's just the kind of energy that we can measure. We've only experienced a small fraction of that. For all we know, there could be multiple different kinds of energies we don't know about, different dimensions or whatever. But the Bible paints this portrait of this angelic realm where there's a myriad of different classes of angels, and within each class there's a myriad of angels, uncountable, innumerable, unfathomably vast. And they're free agents, and you can know that because some of them have rebelled, so they had some free will. And presumably some still have some free will. And some are altogether good, some are altogether evil, but there's also some that are kind of in between. Read Psalms 82. They could go either way. God's saying, hey, you listen to carry out my orders or you're in trouble. And so it's a vast domain of complexity, far more complex than human society. And sometimes what goes on in this invisible dimension, unseen dimension, affects what goes on here. But it just pops in. We don't see the backstory of any of it, so we don't know why did it happen here or not here. What's going? It seems so arbitrary from our perspective because it's all happening outside of our Umwelt, outside of what we can know, unless God gives us a peekaboo. And once in a while, He does. And the Book of Revelation is one such peekaboo. But in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, we get a peekaboo. Because Daniel prays and fasts to hear from the Lord about what's going to happen to Israel as it's in captivity. And this angel is dispatched from the moment Daniel prays, but it gets detained by this demonic prince of Persia, this principality and power that apparently has jurisdiction over Persia, and delays the deliverance of that message to Daniel for 21 days. And then finally, Michael, the archangel, shows up to help in this fight. What took Michael so long to get there? And then the angel's released and comes and delivers Daniel this message. And he says, Daniel, from the first day you prayed, God heard your prayers. I was dispatched, but I was detained for 21 days by the prince of Persia. And now the prince of Greece is joining in, so I got to leave you and go back and join the fight. Okay, so the way it operates in the human realm is sometimes humans can interfere with God's will for people's lives, and that is true of the angelic realm as well. And so for all we know, that angel was dispatched before the first incineration, but was detained by the principalities and powers who always seek to kill, steal, and destroy, and would delight in Elijah misusing his divine authority in a way that cost these 100 people their lives and sets a precedent for future people to follow his example by engaging in religious violence.
There you go.
Well, I think that's about as good of an answer as we're going to get before we get to ask Jesus.
We have to accept all that we do not know. There's what's going on in this cosmos. We know, I know a little bit more than the box elder bug that I see in my bathtub every once in a while, but not much. The box elder bug doesn't have a clue of anything in my life. I don't have a clue as to what the next level is, but it's at least as big a jump as from me, the box elder bug to me. So we have to admit all we don't know. But what we do know is the all-important thing, and that is the character of God, the creator who sustains all things and who wins in the end.
Yeah, right. I think too, and not to bag on humanity, but we are so used to being the center of it all. We are so used to centering ourselves. And so if we don't understand something, if we don't know why, we think that it's about us, that everything revolves around us. But there is so much more going on. You picked off the series talking about angels and principalities and things. There is so much more going on than what we know and see. And that's hard for us to accept. We like to think that we're the be all end all that in a bag of chicken and a tub of grease, but you know what? There are other things.
I always think I want to be the bag of chicken and a tub of grease. That's not my life aspirations. How did you know? Texans speak so strange.
I'm just saying, we're not it.
But we are important.
We're important.
But our insignificance augments all the more the love of the Creator, who would care about these little beings on this little planet, this little solar system, and this medium-sized galaxy.
Absolutely. We are loved with an unsurpassable love, and we have unsurpassable worth because of Jesus. And yet there are other things going on that we know not. And so sometimes we just have to be like, okay,
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But don't say, "Oh, God always shows up right on time." Must have been God's will to delay.
That's a whole nother show, Greg. Honestly,
I know it.
Cut it out. Cut it out.
It taps in on it.
We've gotten Greg all worked up, Dan. He's fanning himself now.
Right.
Well, there's a fan right over there, and I've been thinking about excusing myself to go turn on, but I thought it'd be too much of a disruption, so I'm doing this subtle exercise to keep cool. Hopefully, no one will know.
Good news is you've made it. You've made it through. You've talked through your 3 points. You got some of your stuff out that you had to leave.
It wasn't always.
Okay. You feel like you got to share your knowledge with us. That's how you open the sermon. I have knowledge that I can't show off because I have stuff that I studied and I'm not getting to tell you guys.
Oh, that work. I want to show something for it.
Well, listen, today has been a special extra large episode. And so we do want to thank you all for tuning in. Big MuseCast high five to Greg Boyd for spending this time with us today. And because you had such an extra large platter to eat from today, we're not going to give you nugget time. That'd be gluttonous, and we're not about that. So you'll have to tune in next week, and Dan and I will give you nugget time. Dan will do an extra special nugget dance for you. Yeah. He has a week to work on it.
I'm picking up a lot of food analogies here. It must be dinner time or something.
It's just about dinner time. I'm hungry.
No doubt. All right.
If you guys have questions, comments, please make sure to send them into, Dan's showing you right now. Oh, Greg is too. MuseCast@whchurch.org. Greg told you 4:30. Remember, 4 p.m. That's the magic time.
Details are not my forte, I'm afraid.
What? I'm shocked, I tell you. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Series isn't over, so come on back. Thank you, Greg. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Get some rest.
That's right.
Bye-bye.